Wow. My goodness. This is what? Fourth episode. My goodness. Wow. Good evening everyone. This is Lady Sussex. We have another episode for you guys. Before we get started, I'd like to thank everyone who has downloaded the last episode, which was very, very emotional for me. And I wanted to thank everyone. I think we need to continue that conversation. I think it is really an important conversation to have. So I look forward to continue that. So please subscribe. Please let me know what you think. I would love to hear what you guys have to say and sort of being a part of the journey with me. And let's continue that conversation. And tonight episode, I think we're gonna touch some of the stuff we talked in the last episode. But mainly, I think tonight I would like to talk about reinstating Harry security, because I think it's very, very important as we started hearing from a lot of the vet, and I think they make a good argument. And we also would like to talk, obviously, the response, the so-called response from Harry's brother, of course, and you know who I'm talking about. We would like to touch, and you guys know, the one and the only one, the biggest bully in the world, Piers Morgan. And yes, we are going to talk about Sharon Osbourne, of course. What shouldn't we? And yeah, I have some amazing guests here. Still Charles, George, and another wonderful, great guest we have here. It's Catherine, and you guys will soon hear from her. I think it was important to have another woman here, and sort of we can have like a different perspective from everything that's been going on. So let's get the show started. Hi Charles, hi George, and of course our special guest Catherine. How are you, Catherine?
Hi, doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's good to have you here. The way I would like to start first, let's start by the answer that Harry's brother gave, that, you know, the royal family is not racist. What did you guys make of that answer?
Well, I'll jump in. I think the first thing that struck me about it was not even getting to what he said, but just how he said it, and just not even slowing down or turning around to face the person who asked the question when he gave the answer. I think says a lot about how important it is to him, or not
Charles.
important for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, I myself, I think that, I agree with George that obviously is, he didn't even break stride as he was actually answering the question to the poor journalist. But at the same point, it goes back to what the Queen had mentioned in her first statement about it, saying that it's going to be within the family. So what that means is that they're not going to tell anybody. Like, they're going to just keep it to themselves, and they're going to try and work it out, quote unquote. So, I think that it's something that they're trying to dismiss as much as possible, because they know that it's a hot topic. And so they're just trying their best to kind of sweep it under the rug as usual.
Catherine, what did you think?
I think he probably believes that statement, even though it's an inaccurate statement, most likely. I think there are a lot of people who, because they don't use the slurs that you would assume with racism, and because their actions aren't overt, that, to Charles's point, they can dismiss the idea that they are racist, when if they really took a look at themselves in the mirror, I think that the truth would be disturbing for them to admit.
Absolutely, I agree with you. I actually think that, what were he going to say? That, his family is racist?
Well, but at the same point, though, right? If they have any self-awareness whatsoever about what's going on, the amount of coverage, clearly it's an issue that's blown up across the globe, really. They have some self-awareness to say it's worth taking a more measured and deliberate and outspoken approach to answering that sort of question. Like even if you're not gonna go and address the matter in public like they said they're gonna do it in private as a family in terms of resolving the issue. Even if that's the case, that doesn't mean that you can't be more authoritative and deliberate in what you then say in terms of your response on race more generally. Like there's room to actually.
Well, I don't even understand
make
that.
Progress
I mean,
there
even
for
the
them.
first time they sort of really, actually, I think they were going to introduce Meghan. And they had like a huge party for the family. I think it was right before the wedding. The Duchess of Kent, I believe. I'm not sure. I think it was the Duchess of Kent. She showed up with this sort of brooch that was certainly the meanings of that brooch is very racist, and everyone had talked about that. And I believe she had to apologize. So, I mean, when you think about the royal family, this is like a sort of a kingdom, sort of built on colonialism and just racism. So to say that, you know what, the family is not, come on. I mean, I know he was never going to say that they are, but we all knew, very different.
Well, yeah, I think that's kind of my point. Is it would be an opportunity right now to come and say exactly that, like our history, and there have been aspects that have been racist, but we are actively trying to move into a more progressive way of thinking. Like, it's a space to actually go and say that, and it just seemed like, again, another missed opportunity in terms of
Well,
how
when you look at the Queen,
royal
what
family
she
wants
was
to position
saying,
themselves.
even though she's saying something to the effect that, there is a different recognition of what was saying, but at the end of the day, I don't think she's denying something did say. So for them to sort of now just want to deal it, as a family, which I somewhat understand, I get it, but it's already in the public. And the Queen is overseeing about 62 countries, and they're going to want to hear an answer. They're going to want to hear sort of, who's ruling them. You know what I mean? And so, especially for Charles, because if he was not exempt from, obviously, I think Harry said it wasn't the Queen, it wasn't the Queen's husband, but he didn't say it wasn't his father, and he didn't say it wasn't his brother. So, and they are the next in line. So, they're going to have to answer. They're going to have to say something. I don't think sort of just saying that, okay, we're going to deal with it as a family, going to cut it up. I think they're going to need to publicly say something and deal with something. So what do you guys think?
I think you're right, but I don't think they will. I think they will have to be forced to, like quite literally forced to. I think they're going to play a waiting game. I think they're just going to sit and see how long it's going to stew around in the public, and then if, as we learned about just the other day, that, how the tail wags the dog, right? So basically they're at the bequest of the press, and they have to kind of make the press, kind of feel good, and then it's kind of very much a give and take thing. Just that's because they're really the ones who kind of publicize and make the royalty and the kind of the monarchy relevant. So as long as that kind of dies down, so if in the press this whole thing kind of dies down, then I think that they'll be more than happy to let it go and not to say a word. I think it's going to be up to us and people with like minds to kind of keep this in the public domain, and then make sure that we kind of keep pressure on them, because if we don't, they're certainly just not going to do a thing.
Yeah, I hear you. To your point, I think in the past they probably would get away with it. I think it's one of those things that's gonna really damage them, and they're gonna feel it, because I believe they took a poll, 42% the young folks, which they need. I mean, the monarchy, in order to survive, you're gonna have to have these young folks, sort of being able to be a part of it. And the way they are seeing the monarchy, it's sort of like, it's out of touch. And so I don't think they're going to be able to get away with it.
Well, I think there's been I've heard a number of commentators say that this sort of the interview with Harry and Meghan has potentially triggered the end of the monarchy. And I don't think that that's an overstatement, but I don't think it's because of the interview. I think it's because it's now put the monarchy in a position where it has to have a reckoning. It has to actually meaningfully address the issues at hand. And it does seem like if they don't do what needs to be done, knowing that some things are going to always be just between the family, but if they don't come out and address it in a public way, in a meaningful way, that's just going to potentially lead to the end of the monarchy.
Right. So, go ahead, Catherine.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, you would think that they would know by now that something should be said. I mean, how many times throughout Queen Elizabeth's reign has some sort of scandal happened and she has not said something, or Prince Charles has not said something? And you think that surely someone should be telling them how to handle this. And here we are, and again, it's the same situation, and nothing's being said. And so who's around them? How long have they known that this would likely be something that they needed to have a united front on? And none of this should have been a surprise to anyone, but for a family who lives and dies by the tabloids, you would think that there would have been some sort of game plan that they clearly didn't think about. And that sort of that takes me back to where I think whatever Will's statement is, however inadequate it was, that it just has not occurred to them that they may be in a bubble even more than they think they are. And even in Harry's interview, he admits that himself. And so it's not a surprise, but it's disappointing to know that they weren't prepared, and the people around them.
Do you think that they wasn't prepared, or they never thought that, you know what, Meghan or Harry will go that far? I think they, because I mean, come on now, you know, remember Meghan saying that, you know, I mean, she have email, she got receipt. Do you understand what I mean? I just don't think they believe that, you know, they know that they were going to talk, they were going to say things, because now they don't have the control they use once Apple sort of to know what they're going to say, what they're going to do, and stuff like that. And there's no leaking. There's no one is leaking to them. So I don't think they believe that they were going that far. Because, I mean, even us, the Sussex squad, or the people that, you know, who sort of, you know, fan of Harry and Meghan, and even in the reporters here in the state, you know, all of them saying, yeah, they're probably going to talk about, you know, sort of their new venture with Archwell and stuff like that. They may touch, you know, sort of talk about the press. No one was ready for how deep, you know, sort of how far they went, especially when it comes to the whole race thing, sort of, you know, the color thing, who says what. What's bothering me, because everyone tried to sort of change the subject, saying, well, you know, very often people sort of will talk about kids' color, you know, what color is it going to be, or what color you think. That was not what Meghan said. The word Meghan used was that, what was the word she used, guys? Concern. Concern, to me, that's a completely very different thing, especially after they're saying that, you know what, the kid was not going to be protected. Do you understand what I mean? What is so concerning about it? It's not like, oh, I wonder what your kid's gonna look like. I mean, they probably a little bit sort of, not sensitive. But once you start saying concern, what are you concerned that the kid's not gonna blend with you guys? And what? Please tell me, guys, what do you think?
No, I mean, the thing that really...
How do you see it?
The thing that really just clarified it for me is, what everyone wants to talk about is the fact, what the context was. Please tell me what the context is. That's what it all matters. If it was in a jovial way or in a very familial way, then perhaps, they were talking about it and didn't really matter as much. Not that the people who say that have any right, because they've never been a part of those conversations, and certainly no one's ever said that about their child. But the thing that just sticks out to me most is the fact that the only context cue that you need is the fact that they brought it up during the middle of these interviews. I mean, at the end of the day, they didn't get into this interview with Oprah lightly, and it clearly struck a large enough chord for it to stick around as long as it has. So I think that's all you need to know about the context. Clearly, it made them uncomfortable. Clearly, as you mentioned, they're concerned. It wasn't like, oh, I wonder, or I bet. It wasn't anything that they're trying to, that they were trying to just have a nice conversation or just even feign interest. It was a very deliberative thing, and I don't think they would have brought it up otherwise.
Well, it's that, and it's also that it's the interpretation of it needs to take into account all of the rest of the circumstance, right? It's not like the rest of the treatment was phenomenal or business as usual or anything. This is in addition to the fact that they were not only saying that his child wasn't going to have security, his wife wasn't going to have security, but they're also going to take it away from him. So it's like when you look at all of that together, it's hard to imagine that it wasn't, or it's hard to imagine that it was some nonchalant, familial, jovial thing that didn't really matter.
Catherine, you are a mother. Obviously, you're a mother of two beautiful girls. And obviously, sort of, think of like you're pregnant, and then your husband family would come to you and sort of said, I wonder, I have concern what your child's going to look like. How would you take that? How would you feel?
Well, I would be extremely offended and angry. And I will tell you, when that, as surprised and shocked as Oprah was, I was actually surprised at how surprised Oprah was that was something that had come out. That statement and that thought did not surprise me at all that it had come out. And it may have been shocking to hear those words, but I would have been assuming it would come from somewhere, and maybe they were more surprised as to who said it, whoever that person was. Maybe the closeness to them was what was more shocking than the statement, but it did not surprise me at all that would come out, and that was a thought that someone had, just the insensitivity to think, but then to say out loud to the father of the child. And I am sure whoever said that could at the same time honestly believe that they are not a racist. I can see that same thought.
Right.
Both of those thoughts coming from the same mind.
Absolutely. So where do we go from here? Because for me, I think that, they're going to have to make amends. They're going to have to do something. Because I don't think just sort of, not bringing Harry and Meghan or find a way to bring them into fold and deal with them. The public is not, because it's almost like the cat is out of the bag now. So I don't think just kind of like, not saying anything at all or not try to work with them in some aspect going to work out, because they're going to be big, they're going to be huge, and there's always going to have that kind of competition, because the whole problems with the royal is like, sort of Meghan did not know her place, or Harry did not know her place. As they sort of, really articulate, they like, it happened during the tour of Australia, which is the same thing that happened with his father and his mother, because no one thought that, the public was going to just, adore her, his mother like they did. And it's the same thing that happened with him and Meghan. And that never happened to Kate, and the bald man. So I think that, the whole idea of sort of, you don't know your place and you sort of, need to take a back seat. I don't think they know what they, they wasn't prepared in a way that, the public was going to embrace, Meghan, like they did, even though, right in the beginning, they were talking about she's straight out of Compton, that her mother has dreadlocks and sort of from the other side of the tracks. There was a lot of horrible things that was saying, and yet sort of people feel like they can identify. People feel like, sort of she was the new thing, and she was sort of, people see themselves. And so I don't think they were prepared and ready for that. And so for me now, as we're moving forward, I think with everything that's been happening, they're going to have to find a way to work with them, because they, like the Queen said, let's deal with this as a family. But they tried to do that. Before they come public, they were trying to sort of, see how can we work this, and then no one was listening. No one wanted to listen. And in fact, it's almost like they were punishing them by removing their security. Sort of, their plan was not to come into the state. Their plan, they wanted to stay in the Commonwealth somewhere, perhaps maybe Canada, and then they just leaked their location, and so they had to rent out. So right now, I think it is important for the monarchy, especially the Queen, to find a way to work with Meghan and Harry. What do you guys think?
Well, it brings to mind the age-old saying, which is that they do need to do something, but it's that actions speak louder than words. Like, at this point, you could see it. William himself said it. He said, "We're not racist." It's like, okay, well then show us. Then what are you gonna actually do? What are you gonna put behind those words to prove that? I mean, the security seems like an obvious place to start.
Especially now having, sort of, all the vet. I mean, James O'Brien, which, sort of this guy I really love. He had a podcast, and I hope you guys are able to check him. And sort of he had a vet on, and he really articulated exactly what everyone's been thinking. I mean, he was, sort of born with the wrist. I mean, he was not asked to be born with that kind of wrist off his back. And he served, twice in Iraq, I believe. And so Afghanistan, where did he serve, Harry? Yeah, right? And so, I mean, he's still sort of in danger, And I don't think removing his security, was the right thing to do. I mean, of course, I'm sure it's probably a lot of it also, besides being punishing him, probably it was because of the press sort of, constantly, targeting them. Remove it, and then so being pressured, and they probably feel like they had to do that. But something gonna need to be done, because anything that will happen to Meghan, Harry, or their child, I mean, I don't know. It's not gonna be something like Diana, where sort of, during Diana, sort of people was quite upset, they were quite angry. I think it will be something very different, especially after everyone have heard that kind of interview.
I think it's interesting, because I think, if you think about the double standard that they have, where Prince Andrew has been in the scandal that he is in, that, I mean, honestly, could put him in prison. And it's sort of, okay, yes, he's a very bad boy. We'll deal with him, but he's still fine. Like, he's he's a royal. Seems like he should be stripped of all kinds of things, being associated with what
Absolutely.
he's associated with. And so I see there's a glaring double standard, but I also think as much as the Queen should say something, it's William who I think is the most disappointing and the one that could make or break this. I mean, he's the future. He's the one that dealt with his brother's death alongside Harry. He knows what that is like. He knows how his mother was hounded. And to have seen, and there's so much that's just for show that you have no idea. I don't know what their real relationship was like. Maybe it's not ever been as tight as it looked like it had been over the years, but to hear that they haven't spoken in so long, and then for him to, and maybe he wasn't prepared, which he should be. He's about to be king one day. He should be prepared at all times. That's his whole life has been trying to prepare him for these types of situations. It's on his shoulders, in my opinion. Whatever the future of the monarchy looks like, it's up to him. And if this was the first test, he did not fare very well. And
Absolutely.
to your point, I think whatever happened from like the court of public opinion, I think Harry and Meghan, hopefully they can withstand the backlash that's been created and the falsehoods that have been thrown out to defend, because it's just so, it just seems so Hail Mary-ish of the tabloids and of the royal family. The defense.
I agree with you. I mean, and also too, I mean, all these things the tabloid been going after this girl. When you hear the arguments, there's not a specific thing that they can say the girls she's actually have done. You know what I mean? They blame her for avocado. They blame her sort of for everything that, everyone has been done. You know what I mean? I mean, one of the things that, according to the media that started the whole thing was about them taking private airplanes and, but that is the same thing Charles has done and everyone else is doing. I mean, come on, let's talk about the fact that, Harry's brother, I call him his brother because I refuse to call him by his name because I'm so disappointed about him, is that, sort of, like right after the plane situation, the private plane situation, they pretending as if like they was going to get like, one of those big boring sort of, public planes, like as though they were going to be with sort of, everyone in the plane. And actually the plane was quite empty. So really, it was like they all doing it. And so what my issues is like, what, as Harry said, is that you have 70, I think, many people that from the parliament that come out and defending them. Nobody in the member in the family ever say anything to actually defend them, and that hurt. Because I mean, they come out and sort of defending, Catherine about and Kate about sort of, Botox, hair extensions, all that nonsense thing. But yet they could not defend, Meghan Markle, especially when they knew that, it was Kate who actually, make her cry. It wasn't even her. Do you understand what I mean? And they knew that. And they left the story. Face itself again is this thing that sort of okay, the black girl make the white girl cry, you know what I mean, that just kind of weaponize that tears, and it's something similar to what Sharon Osbourne had done, which we're going to get into a little bit later. It's always that, oh my God, I'm so vulnerable, I'm so cry, oh my God, I dare she make Kate cry and stuff like that. And so she become the villain, I mean, it's like, what are you guys doing? Why? What do they get out of it? I mean, this is your family.
Mm-hmm.
The Queen claimed that, they are much loved family. How do you much love and you will not stand for me? You're not defending me? And another thing that, I'm so mad and pissed off when you hear, oh my God, the Queen is 93 years old. The Queen is 93 years old and her husband is in a hospital. But the Queen is a head of state. If she is that frail, she's 93 years old, she still can handle things like that, then why is she the head of state? Because if you are the head of state, I think that, you have to be ready and prepared for anything. And the idea that they are telling us that she's 93 so we can empathize or we can feel sorry as if we are mistreated our 93-year-old grandmother, this is a woman that was a head of state.
Yeah, it's like if you're not capable of taking care of your family, then how are you going to be
exactly
taking care of a country?
So they quickly to tell you that, oh, she's 93, my God, I cannot believe that. And also, they're the one that will start that. How much do you care for the Queen when you're sitting now on daily trashing her family? Doesn't that hurt her?
Mm-hmm.
So please tell me. I mean, what are your thoughts?
No, I mean, I think just at the end of the day is just more transparency, right? I think it's pretty obvious in terms of why they're doing it, what they're doing it for, and even for the Queen, herself. I mean, obviously what they're interested in is above and beyond anything else. Any one person outside of the monarch herself is to protect the institution. Like, that's it. That rules everything. And then afterwards, I think they were using, Meghan honestly as a foil, so they could maintain interest and they thought that it would actually play well. And I don't think they really thought things through. I think that, I think there was white privilege that was, they thought that it would carry the day. And, being a part of this bubble, I thought they could probably get away with it, Their mindset probably hasn't changed back from the day. And, if you ask the Queen, you ask Philip, and you ask, Charles, and Priscilla, and anybody else, they'll probably be like, oh yeah, it'll be fine, whatever. I totally do that. We'll absolutely get away with it. She'll be a great person that we can kind of, set ourselves against and play off of. And they just didn't expect the, because, I mean, in a sense, they did the same thing to Diana. So I thought they could just basically just get away with the exact same playbook and say, okay, well, that worked, so let's just do it again. Not realizing that the repercussions that it would have. And then also the fact that it was no longer just doing it to a woman, which, the misogyny there is evident, but also they're doing it to a black woman and all the undertones that actually means, and then how that's now being reflected against their entire society. And especially because the Commonwealth is so, there's so many there's so many, black and dark-skinned persons involved in the Commonwealth. So they just didn't see how that would basically transpire and kind of affect everyone else. So, I mean, at the end of the day, they're gonna have to face the facts, and they're gonna have to try and figure out a way to kind of dig themselves out of this hole.
Yeah, exactly. Catherine, I mean.
Yeah, they can't answer. I was just thinking they can't respond the same way that they've responded with everything, with every crisis they face. It's this similar delayed response, and let's hope people forget soon enough. And I think they understand that this isn't going to go away in the same way, and maybe it would have if they did give them security and they did let them stay in Canada and they didn't push them out, and maybe they didn't realize who they were dealing with. Maybe they thought they'd land on their faces when really there are there are friends in high places that they have that aren't royalty that understand what they're dealing with, and so I think the support that they're getting is probably not what they were expecting. If you think about Edward and Wallace Simpson and their exile, like, you know, they still had their little social circles, but they were exiled, and it's not the same here. Like, welcome home is the way that I feel like they are here. And we don't, it's understanding how horrific the tabloids in Britain are, and just knowing how I heard an interview that Hugh Grant had not long ago on NPR just about how they broke into his home and like ransacked his home to find things. Like, just they will do anything to get some sort of a juicy story, which just boggles my mind that that's allowed this day and age. I just think, you know, their playbook needs to be thrown out, because whatever it is that they keep going back to and going back to is not going to work.
Absolutely.
In the way that they're hoping.
Oh my God. I was shocked. Mr. Piers Morgan has exited Good Morning Britain. Good Morning Britain finally have a good morning. So, let's talk about that. What did you guys think? I mean, the biggest bully in the world could not handle a criticism about himself. I could not believe it.
I think Piers Morgan is a horrible person.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone in that criticism.
He's awful.
I would have to say I completely agree with you. I think he is abominable. And then, you know, we all knew that he had thin skin, right? I mean, he reacts off of everything, and, you know, it's all about him and me. And anytime that it's not him, or anytime that anyone steals the attention, it's always, you know, he always throws a fuss. But I think he really put it on display when he walked out, because clearly he couldn't even handle the slight little criticism that he may be getting from one of his colleagues. And, you know, and couldn't even put himself, even for a second, in the shoes of what, you know, his target must have been feeling when she had the entire press after her for years. Mm-hmm. And yet, you know, he couldn't take it for like 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. So,
especially coming from a colleague of his that was, you know, sort of try to educating him. And I mean, because I believe this guy is like himself, he's biracial, you know what I mean? And he was trying to give him, like, you know, sort of, you know, look, this is how you make me feel. Hearing you going after her day to day and day out, and she never answered to you. And he couldn't deal with it.
Yeah.
He could not deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. And then, you know, what even put in even worse, I mean, if I could have a worse opinion of him, it'd be shocking. But, I mean, this even dug the hole lower, is that, you know, I think that whole thing was staged anyway, because apparently what happened is that, you know, he got in a huff and, you know, close to tears and, you know, ran off the set and then quit or whatever, was fired, whatever happened. And then, you know, like the very next day, he happens to be setting up like his own, like, you know, far right show. He already had something else kind of on the, you know, he already had something already set up on the side, as if this was, you know. So if you already had something and you know you were walking into this new thing and you had it going up, like, this doesn't happen in a day, because it literally was like the next day. So clearly this must have been planned. I mean, he was looking for an exit. He was looking for a reason to kind of get up and leave, and then, you know, have a lot of press about it, so he could draw as much attention as possible, because that's what he likes to do. So, you know, when he did land at his new job, that he now had, you know, he had all this basic press kind of pushing that way for him as well. And then he had a platform to kind of start off his show with, saying that, you know, you can't shut me up, blah, 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 blah. So the whole thing was just very methodical and planned, and then pathetic, really. But, I think that also just goes in line with his character as well. I can't say that I'm surprised about any of it.
Well, what you say makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I actually didn't think about that. I didn't think about that at all. But it is making sense to me right now. For me, I thought that, he was just not ready. I guess he thought that, sort of he could just walk out and he was going to come back, because from what I understand that he didn't want to apologize. And so it is possible, you're right. It was all sort of, him wanting it to just have this big exit and sort of, have everyone talk about it, especially from what I understand that, when he left that day, they had their biggest rating, beat out BBC. But this is the problem that he's going to have. Because he could have sort of tried to sort of smooth things out, but he's still like, I don't believe her. And to me, I am seeing like a hint of like what we've been dealing with Me Too movement, times is up and all that, because there you go, you have a woman that obviously perhaps maybe he was really interested in, and that woman sort of basically said no by not answering, by not ever calling him back, and his ego was hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And so he decided, for the next 4 years that he was going to make this woman's life miserable. And I believe for many women that who sort of have been harassed, or sort of to me it's a sense of harassment. You're harassing this woman every day, you're sort of abusing her. It to me is no different than working in an office and you have this sort of somebody, especially somebody like him that was that powerful, have this mega platform and sort of telling you that you got to do A, Y, Z, otherwise your job, you risk of losing your job or whatever. And this is what many women have gone through. I mean, it's a different form of it. Yes, it was not sexual. It wasn't sort of, rape. But at the end of the day, he was trying to gain power and have had power to actually abuse this woman for the last 4 years. And through all that, this woman have sort of, mental health issues. Again, there we go again. Us women not being believed when we say we either been hurt or we are sort of being harassed, or we are sort of our mental health is not, no, you crazy, you don't know what you're talking, we are not being believed. And this is what we have been trying to fight for the last maybe 2 years now with Me Too movement and all that. So what are your thoughts as a woman, because obviously it's good to have a woman here, so we can talk this issue. How did you see it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, to your point, everything that Piers Morgan does is about Piers Morgan. So everything's calculated. Everything has to be about him first and whatever power he feels like he can pull from that. And I think that finally we're starting to turn the corner. I mean, even with Governor Cuomo now, like, people are still going to be pushing and still going to be denying, but the voices are louder finally. And it's not taking as long for people to actually believe someone when they're saying it, and to, ignore all of the red flags that may go up about the accuser, or the accused, and thinking about Piers Morgan, like, woe is me after all of this. Like, it's time that we are heard, and the fight is coming. We're not just going to be quiet, because the support is there now, and it's out.
Right.
And
right.
Just like everything else, it's not just something that you read in the newspaper. You can see it live and in person on a video, and that it's so much more impactful. And I don't know how long it will take for the change to be ultimate, but it's coming. And that makes me excited that finally it's not the people are becoming tone deaf to the it's her fault, which is
Right.
great. But we're not
Right.
there yet. But we're turning in the right direction.
I think for me is sort of, especially when it comes to the mental health issue, for me this is like sort of is really personal. In the last episode that I have, sort of I talk about my own mental health issue and the stigma with that, and sort of you don't often want to talk about it, and sometimes you find yourself in that dark place, and you don't know how to talk about it. You don't know how even to ask for help sometime. And to me, when you running around say you don't believe her, is it believe would it mean that, you know what, she would have to kill herself and then that's when you would have believed it? How would you believe her? What would she could have possibly done or say that would make you believe her unless she did actually take her life? So to me is that, to say to someone who has mental health, who suffer and who comes to the dark place of wanting to take their lives, and to say something to the effect that you don't believe her, that kills me. Because how many people who are listening to him, who looking at Meghan Markle and said, if they don't believe her, with all her resources, with everything she has available to her, what about me? What about me? How do you sort of, go out and ask for help if you feel like the resources that you may have going to look at you and say, you know what, you're just crazy, or you just maybe need a good night's sleep? Or say that you do have these issues and then someone turn around and say they don't believe you. And for me, as I said again, who have suffered with mental health and I had to suck out treatment for a very long time, and thank God that, you know what, I feel like I am on the other side. But when I looked at people like the great Alexander McQueen, the Kate Spades, the Caroline Flax, all these wonderful, great people, they had the biggest career, and from the outside world, it's like they have everything. These are people that would be in worship. These are sort of like, my idols, which is Alexander McQueen, a man that, I literally worship. Young and have everything going on. And yes, took his life. And I wonder sometimes, what if he had asked for help and no one listened? Caroline, who also was dealing with a lot of press, the British press. In fact, the day this woman took her life, I believe the Sun or the Mail online was about to print some story about her, which is the same thing that I believe they did with Diana, and they had to pull out the articles. Right? Seriously.
Well, I think that's why it's so important what Harry and Meghan have done, and continue to do, and just specifically the interview, to really take a stand and demand to be heard and demand to be taken seriously, and to do it in the roles that they are in, because they are not just anyone. They're at the top of a institution, at the top of one of the major countries in the world, and so for them to do it in that stage, in that arena, kind of the cascading effects that it has for everyone else in the world. This is something you had said a couple shows ago, is that at the end of the day, it's not really, it is about Meghan and Harry, but it's also just so much more than Meghan and Harry. It really affects everyone. And that's, I think, one of the things I get a little bit frustrated at when I look at, and I sort of understand it, but I think it's maybe if some Americans took a little bit more time to think about it. So many people are like, the royals, I don't care. What does that matter to me? But I think if there was a half second of thought of like, what does it really mean? What is that symbolic power? What does that representation mean? And to just pause for a minute and step back and think about that, you'd realize that it really is hugely important in terms of what they're doing and how it is ultimately addressed.
Yeah, one of the thing also too I'm really, really mad about the fact that even with everything that's going on, as the Queen talk about, like, you know what, this is a family thing, when you hear this woman, let's just say you didn't know, let's just say whatever, and then people are saying that, you know, we shouldn't believe her. To me, there should have been like a bigger statement that will address that, especially when they had a whole campaign thing going about, you know, mental health. I'm gonna play something to you. It's by Don Woodon, that who has a show. Again, he's from The Sun, and he's very often, you know, that's where you hear the leak coming from. I believe, you know, even when Harry was getting ready to make his announcement, one of the reasons why he made that announcement, you know, the way he did, it was because that it was leaking, you know, in The Sun, I believe. And so they could say all they want that, you know what, they don't have anything to do with the leaking. Now, this guy, please listen to him. We're going to play it. Just listen.
So unlike Meghan, because she swears that she actually doesn't even read her own press, my royal sources tell me that Harry reads everything, and he often stews over the most minor of slights. So he'll sit in that publicly funded mansion, because remember, it's not a cottage, it's a £2.4 million mansion refurbished by us on taxpayers' money, and he'll watch the TV coverage and he'll flick through the newspapers and look at all of those articles online about him while cursing his staff. And obviously, it's so much easier for them to blame anything uncomfortable on racism, rather than actually address the fact that much of the negativity towards the couple is coming from within the royal family. The royal family and staff of the royal family are the ones that are very often leaking these stories to the press.
So there we go. So if this man is saying they are the one that was leaking, so I wonder, do you think that is the reason why maybe perhaps they are scared to come out to actually defend this woman? What do you guys thought?
Yeah, I mean, like you said before, I mean, Meghan has the receipts. So I think that at the end of the day, I don't think it would be too difficult to probably prove that would be the case, right? Clearly they're getting these stories someplace. They're not just kind of materialized, and it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest to realize that, they're being fed from the palace itself. So it just makes the whole thing even murky, like more murky and disgusting and pathetic, really. Because at the end of the day, if you realize it's one thing for them not to do anything to help her, it's another thing, or Harry for that matter as well, but it's entirely a different thing for them to actually be perpetuating the damage themselves. If they're the ones who are actually, causing and being the root cause of the abuse, then all of a sudden it's much more than, them just being, taking a lax attitude, or them just being very royal and trying to be above everything. At that point, I mean, it's clearly personal, and then it just begs to, understand why. And there's really only one outcome as to, why would they want to treat Meghan specifically, but Meghan and Harry as a unit, why would they want to treat them differently? And I mean, I think you could really only draw one conclusion from it.
Right. Well, I want to talk to Catherine now, because again, that really hurt me. I mean, you could imagine if you see, like I said, you're a mother of two, and talk about a little bit when you were pregnant, your first, child. During that time, I'm sure many women, obviously I'm not a mother yet, and they talk about their hormones and everything that they go through to actually sort of get into a place where you want to harm yourself and your unborn child. Is there any way you can speak, on sort of what are the feelings? Where are you, like when you were 5, 6, 7, 8 months and going through maybe perhaps your own issues? How does the hormone, everything that a woman go through when you're pregnant, how does that manifest itself? And if you're looking at what Meghan had to deal with at that time, could you tell the folks that is going to listen to this like a pregnant woman perspective, if that makes
Yeah,
any sense?
I mean, it's especially given that it's her first child when everything was happening. It's with so much being brand new and so much being unknown and so many fears that come up on a daily basis of, am I healthy? Is my baby healthy? Am I going to be a good mother? Is pregnancy going to be good? There's so much in your head anyway when you have the support system around you. I couldn't imagine dealing with what she was dealing with at the same time. And, it makes you think about, well, what kind of family is this? Of course, they're not your average family, but how detached are they from each other, really? To think about how, only a few years ago, Harry and Will had their special on television talking about mental health then, and he supposedly is this champion of it, and that all it's meaningless now coming from him if this is how he'll respond when it's his own brother. And I don't see how a mom could do that.
Right. And that's
or a grandma could do that.
And that's exactly.
Or a brother who has been through the worst with you and has lost your mom for the exact same reasons that she is now being tortured by, and you stand by and allow it, or maybe even contribute to it,
right,
is just appalling and unfathomable.
And that's the reason why I think there's no way they're going to have to deal as a family. They're going to have to bring this out. They're going to have to talk about it, because I think it's very important, because otherwise people is going to be like, wait a minute, there's going to be too many questions. There's going to be too much questions around, especially when it comes to the mental health issues. I mean, the race thing is huge, but the mental health, when you guys talk about mental health all the time, you're supposed to be, like you said, champion of mental health. I think they're going to have to do something, say something, have a conversation, open up. I don't know how they're going to do it, but there's something need to be done. Right? So, okay, before I close the show, I would like to talk about, oh my God, Miss Hasborn, whatever her name is, Sharon Hasborn. What did you guys think about her rant? Defending peers.
Well, I didn't see the initial rant. I just kind of saw the subsequent conversation and her trying to defend herself, and I was just kind of not necessarily surprising, but it was a bit taken aback at how angry she was, and how seemingly unable to empathize or broaden her perspective at all. I can somewhat understand it because I've been there. Like, what does it mean to be a white person and to feel like you're being accused of being a racist? You can get kind of a bit blinded. You can get very emotional, but I think that's what most white people don't realize, is that there's so much more to racism than those kind of more overt actions. And there is a lot of even if people are actively saying, I'm not saying you're a racist, you individually, but speaking about the system or how things just kind of happen naturally, or what is it even just like to be a person of color living in the world today. I think that's where white people need to do a lot better in terms of just being able to take a step back and not be so personally offended, and just be able to think for a minute about how it's not, you actually have had all of the privilege to take a step back, check your own ego, and just listen for a minute to how someone else is saying they might feel, or how you might have missed something. Maybe there's something you don't know. And I think she just put on a perfect display of what most white people do, is just like not be able to take a step back at all.
That's what the privilege is that you've been in, you don't have to deal with that. So what are your thoughts, Charles?
Well, for me, I think I think the big thing that I think about how she behaved is, first, I think that people get conflated between being a racist and doing something that's racist. Just because you happen to do something that's racist by accident or whatever else, I don't think that we can label you for a racist for eternity. You know, I think that you may have made a mistake, that you have a very particular point of view or perspective, and it's limited, and you don't see and understand how you may offend someone else, and you make a mistake. I think people can do that. I think what separates you from doing something that's racist, from being a racist, is owning up to it and understanding that, you know what, this is something that clearly I didn't understand the repercussions of it, and I'm going to grow as a person. I think that's the distinction. And I think what Sharon did is not that. I think she just shut it down completely, was not interested at all about trying to grow or understand kind of the other point of view, or how she was offending an entire race of people. And I think that is the epitome of white privilege. That it doesn't matter what anyone else outside of her feels about it or thinks about it, and they just have to take it. And, you know, in the same way that she was able, the other host, you know, Cheryl, when she was telling her not to cry, that, you know, to don't show me your tears, or whatever it is that she said. I mean, like, it's not like she doesn't have the right to be offended about it. She doesn't have the right to have any kind of emotional, you know, impact over what it is that she feels that she's being said. You know, I think that was horrific, frankly. And I think just emblematic of her character. You know, I can understand, as George had mentioned, that it can certainly take people back. Like, no one ever wants to think that that's how they are, you know? I mean, I don't think, you know, unless you're truly just off the deep end, I don't think you ever want to just take onto yourself and realize, you know, as a part of your character that you're, you know, disparaging another race, or that you're racist. I don't think that's what people just naturally think of themselves as being, right? And so when that's confronted and portrayed and pointed out to you, then I think that people have a real problem with it, and they react that way. But again, without being willing to understand why someone says that, I think that proves the fact that you don't believe that they're worth your time.
It's thinking about it more, that interaction between the two of them, between Osborne and Cheryl, feels like a microcosm of race in the world today and racism in the world today. Because on the one hand, you've got the white person, what struck me, in addition to her telling her co-host not to cry, which I agree was horrific, but her basically saying, I think 5 times in a row, how can I be racist? How can something that I did be racist? And it's that being emblematic of the lack of work and effort that a lot of white people have basically not done to have a reckoning with what is race and what has it been, what does it mean for other people who don't have white privilege. It's that lack of understanding that's been put into it, and also the inability to really even consider it. So you've got the problem there represented by Osborne, but then at the same time you have the solution also represented by Cheryl, who's saying, listen, you just need to listen. If you can actually just open up and stop for a minute and just think, this, like, here's the answer, I can explain it to you, I've lived it. You have the problem captured and represented in one person, and you have the answer represented at the same exact point.
What about you, Catherine? What did you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think especially now with the conversations going on, not just in America, but around the world, for her to respond in the way she did was not just a complete lack of understanding that it was time for her to shut up and listen, but the fact that her head is in the sand and that, oh, you just protest too much.
Right.
So I think it's a journey that everyone's on, and maybe people are at different points of that journey, but it's not about white people. It's not about you. Take it away from being about you. It's always about you. This is not about you. This is about Black people and people of color and what has been happening to them, and you are not the victim here. You never have been. So please do not tell us you're the victim in this situation.
Right. Well, for me, is that, I think, I love Sharon. I think she's an amazing woman when you hear her story, and it's one that you can inspire by. So I was very, very disappointed in her, the way she responding to Cheryl and what she did. And even the fact, her apology, the fact that, she sort of mentioned how the Black community always has been a great support to her, and that she was nervous, she was all this different thing that was happening, which I can understand. But what she did not do in that apology, she never apologized to Cheryl, and who happened to be a friend. And furthermore, I can understand that, you want to support your friend. Obviously, if you have a friend, good, bad, you want to, support your friend. But the idea is that, you cannot do both things. You cannot say, what, I'm against what he did, but this is my friend and I like him. I will give him, any sort of kind of support that he needs, but I disagree. Piers Morgan. And so it's like, hello. What she was doing in the show is try to call Cheryl out and say, please tell me what he had ever seen that was racist, and was not willing to listen. Do you understand what I mean? Because and again, there we go again with I'm 63 years old. 63, you should know better. I don't think racism is a new thing. And you are on TV constantly having that kind of conversation. You supposedly have Black friends. You should know better. And if you have a friend that doesn't know any better, I'd expect you to be a good friend and say, you know what? Let me give you a different perspective. I like you. I care about you. But what you said was wrong. That's been a good friend. Do I have it wrong?
No, I think it's the harder thing to do, certainly, to confront people with the truth when it's not where they already are, but that's what.
Okay, well, we are gonna come, to the last word. What is your hope, Josh? Last word.
My hope is, I think, that the monarchy, I think, actually takes the opportunity that's been presented to them, because I think they have the power to do a lot of good, and I think that the opportunity is there for them to do it. They just need to step up. So I hope they do.
Charles.
No, I would agree. I think that it would be an opportunity wasted if they actually didn't confront this issue head on and deal with it in a loving and thoughtful way.
Catherine, last word and hope.
I think my hope is recognition for them. And to Charles's point, whether we hear about it in the public or not, my hope is that they recognize that they need to extend and apologize and realize that a lot of damage has been done. But Meghan and Harry seem open and willing to be welcomed back if that's what they'd like to do. And I think it needs to stop being about the image of the family and being about the family. So my hope is that that will happen.
I 100% agree with you. I think for me, I think it's a second chance that they have, because I believe they had missed a huge opportunity. The fact that you can have 62 countries and this woman who is biracial that could have done so much for the monarchy to bring it forward. The fact that, England is just multicultural, multiracial. And it's sort of like, you finally have like a face that people can relate to. And they did not harvest that. And, they had a goal in their hand. And I think with everything that happened, it's a chance to sort of work back and make good and actually figure out how can we bring them back? How can we sort of finally listen? What did we do wrong? I think a lot of people need to be fired. Like Harry said, I think that, the monarchy, the courtier, they've been giving them really, really bad advice. And so I think, they need to sort of, clean the house and have new blood. And so with that, I'm closing in. I'd like to thank my guests, Charles and George, again, joining me tonight. And of course, Catherine, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I look forward to continue the conversation, because it's again, like I said, and I think everyone in the squad said, this is bigger than Meghan and Harry. It's about all of us. And I hope we're able to continue this conversation. And for those of you listeners, please subscribe, please sort of share it, and let's be a part of this wonderful journey that we're on. We need all the support we can have. Good night.